Last week, Mike Evans told all of his impatient haters out there in fantasy football land to suck it. Can he do it again this week? Let's find out. Talking starts and sits, wide receiver position, week 4. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you're all doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking wide receivers now, week 4 fantasy football. Now, the wide receiver position is a lot different than the running back position. More than likely, you have multiple fantasy viable wide receivers all over your roster, in the starting lineup and on your bench. It's hard to figure out on a weekly basis who are the best options, but that's what we're going to try to find here today. Now, like usual, before we get into week 4's numbers, let's talk about week 3. How did we do in week 3? Well, week 3 was a little bit rough. There were some studs that absolutely let us down and killed our percentage here in week 3. We rated 61 players as a start or sit designation, got 34 of them correct for a percentage of 56%. Now, some of our biggest hits of the week: Marvin Jones, had him as a start, played a great game. Mecole Hardman, that big play, sealed a lot of fantasy days, another solid start. Both Carolina wide receivers, people were worried with the starting of Kyle Allen, both Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore, awesome games. Had a sit designation of Tyler Boyd, and a lot of people gave a lot of hate for that, but Tyler Boyd had himself an off day going up against the Buffalo Bills' tough pass defense. Both Arizona wide receivers, Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, both listed as starts this week, both had solid performances. How about some of the misses? Some big names that really hurt us. Guys that you're going to mostly, be a must start every single week, but you know what? We had them as a start, so we take the hit on it. Devontae Adams, Robert Woods, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin, MVS, and Sterling Shepard, all misses from last week. Our biggest misses from last week that really hurt the overall percentage here for the wide receiver position. So let's see if we can improve it here on week 4. Let's get right into the games, talking week 4 fantasy football wide receivers. Eagles and Packers up first, and we're going to start Devontae Adams regardless, right? Even though he's disappointed a few times so far this season, it's Devontae Adams in the big games. They're coming. Aaron Rodgers and the coaching staff of the Green Bay Packers have already come out and said, hey, listen, we need to get the ball in this guy's hands more often, and it will not surprise me to see it happen this week going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. MVS coming off a great week 3, kind of have him as a flex play at best. As of right now, it looks like he's going to be shadowed by Sidney Jones of the Philadelphia Eagles, who shut down Kenny Golladay last week. Does that happen this week? Possible, but MVS still has that high upside, just more of a flex play to limit some of the risk. Nelson Agholor, as of right now, I have as a start. Really going to depend. It sounds like Alshon Jeffrey is going to play. It's something we still need to monitor here leading up to game time. But if Alshon Jeffrey plays and Deshaun Jackson sits, which is what it sounds like, it's kind of a good thing for Nelson Agholor. The past few weeks, he's really garnered the bulk of the defensive attention. If Alshon Jeffrey can get out there on the opposite side of him and draw away some defensive coverage, the volume should still be there for Nelson Agholor. He may not just see the double teams and the attention from the defensive side of the football. I still like Nelson Agholor this week. Obviously, Alshon Jeffrey coming off an injury. I'm not overly excited to start him against the Green Bay Packers. I want to see how healthy he is. I want to make sure he's not just out there to be a decoy. So Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, both sits for me dealing with injuries here in week 4. Titans and Falcons up now, and starting Julio Jones, obviously, right? Hopefully by now, you're starting to enjoy what it's like to have Julio Jones and the touchdowns. A lot of people complained about it for years. The touchdowns are here. The yardage is here. Enjoy it while you can. It's a difficult matchup-ish against the Tennessee Titans, but they proved last week against Gardner Minshew that they can give up the deep ball at times. Obviously, you're starting Julio Jones for the same reason you're going to start Calvin Ridley. Now, he absolutely killed a lot of teams last week. Trust me, he's on a few of my squads, and he hurt me also. But it's not something we can just turn our back on. It was an off game. He wasn't really involved in the game plan or the script. This week, he has that touchdown upside every single week. That big play ability, the defensive attention that's constantly going to go towards Julio Jones. Plus, there's a chance that Malcolm Butler is who's lined up against Calvin Ridley. And so far, on this early part of the season, he's been one of the worst defensive backs in all of football. Still going to start Calvin Ridley. Now, Adam Humphries, I have as a PPR flex play option. Hopefully in those deeper leagues, 12, 14, 16 team leagues. I like the upside possibly of an Adam Humphries this week. Last week coming off 6 catches for 93 yards. And he's not going to be the guy to come out there and just blow the doors off, stat-wise. But he has that ability to eat underneath those underneath routes, rack up receptions, and get some decent yardage in those deeper leagues. Solid flex play this week against the Atlanta Falcons. As for A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, neither one of them are consistent enough, and they don't throw the ball down the field enough in Tennessee for them to be even close to my starting lineup, especially here this early in the season in Week 4. Redskins and Giants up next, and we're going to start Terry McLaurin because the guy doesn't even look like a rookie wide receiver. I mean, he's playing like a seasoned vet. The first 3 games of his career, he's had at least 5 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown in each of his first 3 games. That consistency is there for Terry McLaurin. That's what we look for in fantasy football, not just the big games and then start them. Try to find these trends, this consistency. Right now, Terry McLaurin is about as consistent as it gets for a rookie that's especially as young as he is. We know that the Redskins are going to struggle running the football. They haven't been great at it all year long. Case Keenum's going to go out there and throw it to everybody that he possibly can that wants to catch a football. Terry McLaurin, one of the best on the field. He's going to be a start this week. Paul Richardson came off a great week last week, but it's not one of those guys where he's proven that consistency as of yet. So I have him as a deep league PPR flex play at best. 14, 16 teams. If you're looking for a flex start, maybe you have multiple flex positions, or maybe you start 3 wide receivers. Then all of a sudden, Paul Richardson gains some of that value. But in those normal 10-team leagues, not really looking at Paul Richardson too much. Sterling Shepard, on the other hand, he's back. He looks healthy. Had a great week 3, coming off 7 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. And that volume is going to be there every single week. And now he has Daniel Jones, who looks like maybe the greatest quarterback of all time under center. I mean, he came out and absolutely killed it in his first pro game. The chemistry between the two of them was obvious. Sterling Shepard is one of these names that I would be looking at. Maybe he's on some waiver wires in some of your leagues, some of these small leagues. This is somebody that you want to have on your roster because all of a sudden he has weekly flex play upside, and he can get all the way up into that wide receiver 2 tier if the play like this continues. Love some Sterling Shepard. I got him as a start here in week 4. Going to continue the trend of starting everybody who plays the Miami Dolphins all year long, but in this case, you'd start him anyway. Keenan Allen is absolutely tearing it up right now. Just through 3 games, he has 29 catches, 404 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns in the first 3 weeks of the season. And now he gets the Miami Dolphins. Xavier Howard on the other side. Therefore, Miami doesn't seem to care to play defense. I mean, it doesn't look like anybody cares in Miami, so we're starting Keenan Allen, obviously. Mike Williams also has that upside. He may be a little bit more risky because if they do get a lead, I can see them leaning more on the Justin Jacksons late in the second half of ball games, but Virgil Green is banged up. There's not a whole lot of other options there. Mike Williams has that big play potential every single week and has a deeper league flex play. Doesn't even have to be that deep. Even in like 10 or 12 team leagues, I would take a chance on Mike Williams as my flex spot here this week. I love the upside. Anybody playing the Dolphins has that upside on a weekly basis. On the other hand, you got fantasy Bigfoot, Devontae Parker, not interested. Dude's too inconsistent. And Preston Williams has a lot of talent. They're going to throw it a lot in Miami, but the consistency just isn't there for me. However, if you play DFS, Preston Williams, somebody may have a little bit of sneaky upside because we expect Miami to have to throw all 4 quarters like usual. He's their best option. He's probably a cheap option for you there for your DFS size. Just a name to keep in the back of your mind if you're looking to fill a roster here later in the week. Raiders and Colts up next. We're going to start Tyrell Williams because he's the best receiving option in Oakland outside of anybody named Darren Balls to the Waller. And he's got that high touchdown upside on a weekly basis. Doesn't seem to be hampered by the injury too much, so he's going to be a start. T.Y. Hilton is where we really need to focus, though, and pay attention. Watch the injury reports. There's a real chance that he misses this game this week with a quad injury. If he does, that's really going to limit the upside of the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of people counted this team out as soon as Andrew Luck retired, but Jacoby Brissett has been more than serviceable, but he needs T.Y. Hilton. If T.Y. Hilton does sit, all of a sudden we're looking at the Zach Pascals and maybe a Paris Campbell, who I have as a sit right now, becomes a little bit more fantasy viable if T.Y. Hilton sits. So make sure you pay attention to this. This is definitely an injury you want to follow into the weekend because there's a real chance that he may just be a game time decision. Make sure you have that backup plan on your bench because if T.Y. Hilton doesn't go, you want to make sure you're not caught with your pants down. Panthers and Texans up next, and we're going to start the duo of DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel once again. No more Cam Newton here this week, and Kyle Allen will be back under center. Now, the Texans' defense is going to be a little bit more difficult than the Arizona Cardinals, but not by much, and we've already shown that Kyle Allen can come out there and sling it down the field. DJ Moore had a huge touchdown play last week against Arizona, really his only play of the game. Curtis Samuel a little bit safer, but both of these guys had touchdowns. Samuel seems to be a little bit more of the PPR option, but the big playability is there more for DJ Moore. However, both of them have the ability to kind of flip-flop roles. You can switch one of them underneath and one of them over the top seamlessly for the most part. They already have that chemistry with Kyle Allen. They look great, and I expect it again this week going up against the Houston Texans. Have both DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel as starts. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be a weekly must start, right? He's kind of disappointed here the past couple weeks with his performance, but you can't sit him. It's kind of like the Mike Evans factor from a few weeks ago. You may be disappointed with the Devontae Adams and the DeAndre Hopkins, but you can't sit him because as soon as you do, that's going to be the week that they erupt for 40 points on your bench. They're weekly must-starts. Don't overthink it. You start DeAndre Hopkins. For the sits, we're going to sit Will Fuller and Kenny Stills. Now, a lot of people expected more out of Will Fuller, but I think the reason that his upside has been limited is because of Kenny Stills. They're kind of eating into each other's production. I mean, as of this point right now, Will Fuller, the big play guy for Deshaun Watson in years past when he was healthy, he's only averaging 4 targets and 53 yards a game right now. Not somebody you can really count on. Some of those big down-the-field plays that used to go towards Will Fuller, Kenny Stills is taking away some of those right now, so it's really limiting those upsides. They're kind of canceling each other out at this point. Unless you're in a really deep league, 14, 16 teams, I'm not really going to be looking to start either Will Fuller or Kenny Stills this week, going up against the Carolina Panthers pass defense, which is very, very much above average in the league here right now. Chiefs and Lions up next, and boy, do I like everybody in this game. I mean, at this point, how can you really bench Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, or Sammy Watkins? I mean, all three of these guys through 3 weeks have proven that they can take your fantasy team to victory almost single-handedly. You can't really afford to have them on the bench because their ceiling is so astronomical. I mean, this Chiefs offense and Patrick Mahomes, they're on a different level. These guys are weekly must-starts as far as at least a flex play at best. More than likely, all of these guys were bench wide receivers or somebody you took off the waiver wire anyway. At this point, though, it's too much of a risk to sit them. I have them as weekly flex plays, just somebody you can throw in there and have that huge ceiling. Kenny Golladay coming off a horrible week 3, looking for him to bounce back against the Kansas City Chiefs that we just talked about. They're going to put up points. Detroit's not going to be able to rely on the running game. They're going to have to throw the ball. Marvin Jones had a great week 3, and I look for both of these guys to be heavily involved all game long, both Golladay and Jones, trying to keep pace with the Kansas City Chiefs. They could go back and forth. I think the Chiefs come out on top, but there could be a whole lot of passing yards in this game. Browns and Ravens up now, and Odell Beckham going to be one of those weekly must-start. He has almost 300 yards receiving through the first 3 weeks of the game, but yes, the bulk of that came in week 2 with that huge game in the Meadowlands against the Jets. But, I mean, you just can't afford to sit Odell Beckham. At some point or another, this Browns offense is going to click. Tough defensive matchup going up against the Ravens, but I expect him to struggle a little bit on the ground as Cleveland, so I expect a heavy dose of passing through the air. It's kind of also why I have a Jarvis Landry as a start this week. He's been somebody who's really been disappointing to go along in this offense. He hasn't really topped 4 receptions yet on the season in a game. But this week, like I said, they're going to have to rely on the passing game a little bit more, and Jarvis Landry is going to have to be somebody that starts to get involved in this offense. They can't continue to force-feed Odell Beckham. Jarvis Landry as a flex play this week, I think, has some upside. Marquise Hollywood Brown, he had a down week last week, but going up against the Cleveland Browns, who we already know their secondary is riddled with injuries. We saw it last week with the Cooper Kupps and Brandon Cooks. They got absolutely torched by the Los Angeles Rams. I'm looking for Marquise Brown and Lamar Jackson to have a bounce-back week this week and put up some big numbers. I put Willie Snead on here as a sit because obviously he's not somebody you really want to have in your lineup, but I put him on here as kind of a reminder. Another one of these DFS sneaky type plays. He's played in the slot where he could eat a little bit, kind of like we saw from Cooper Kupp. If that's the case, sneaky DFS plays later in the week, you're looking for a cheap option. Willie Snead is a name that you may not want to pass by. Pats and Bills up next, and this one kind of worries me a little bit. Could this be a trap game for New England? I mean, everybody is talking about how great they are, best team in the NFL. Myself included, they look like the best team so far here in this young season. But the Bills are highly, highly underrated and themselves have a very, very good defense. Now, it kind of worries me because Julian Edelman, not 100%. Is he limited throughout the week? Does he play this week? And it sounds like he will, but that's something we need to monitor. Does Tre'Davious White lock down Josh Gordon? Are we solely reliant on Philip Dorsett and this offense? Now, just last week, a lot of people were expecting more from Tyler Boyd and John Ross going up against this Buffalo Bills team. Now, am I saying that John Ross and Tyler Boyd and Andy Dalton are the equivalent to the New England Patriots? No, I'm not. I'm just saying that this defense is very underrated and does not get enough credit. It worries me that all these guys may not have that wide receiver 2 upside this week. They may be more like flex plays at best going into Buffalo against a very difficult defense. I'm tempering expectations against all the New England Patriots wide receivers. For the sits, I'm going to sit both John Brown and Cole Beasley. Why? This defense of the New England Patriots is that good. They are the #1 passing defense in the NFL, and I expect a heavy ground and pound style game trying to control the clock by Buffalo. Are they going to find success? They may be big play dependent. They may need one of these big strikes down the field, a big run by Josh Allen on a broken coverage. Whatever it is, they're going to have that big play to have a chance in this game. It may happen, but trying to figure out which one of these guys gets it is a little bit too risky for me. I'm sitting both Brown and Beasley here in week 4. Bucks and Rams up next, and I like everybody in this game. Mike Evans last week rewarding the owners who didn't give up on him after a very, very slow start. Came out and probably won a lot of people their fantasy weeks. Chris Godwin may have lost a few people their fantasy weeks, but we can't expect that type of production every single week from Mike Evans. That's going to even out more a little bit. And Chris Godwin is just an elite talent that you cannot afford to bench on a weekly basis, especially against a Los Angeles Rams team who can get after the passer. They're going to need to get the ball out quickly. It's a poor offensive line there in Tampa Bay. We know Aaron Donald can create havoc. They're going to need the pass-catching weapons on the outside. Can't sit Evans or Godwin this week. Neither can you sit the trio of wide receivers right now in Los Angeles. I think Cooper Kupp is the safest bet out of all of them. The high play upside, the touchdown upside is going to be there for Cooper Kupp. Brandon Cooks, he's still a little bit underrated. He's number 2 here in this offense. And Robert Woods kind of seems to be like the safety valve, the afterthought. If the other two aren't open, then we'll go to Robert Woods. So he's more of a flex play, but the upside for any one of these guys is there on a weekly basis, especially this week. It's very difficult to run against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I actually have Todd Gurley as a sit this week on the running back video because I expect them to have to throw the ball a little bit more. This could be a whole lot of passing all the way around. All 5 of these guys have great upside here for week 4. Seattle and Arizona up next, and I like all the pieces in this game also. Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk both have 30 targets so far on the young season, averaging 10 targets a game. Not too many wide receivers average those numbers on a weekly basis. They have to throw the ball a lot in Arizona. The offensive line is not great enough for them to sit back there and run the ball 20 to 25 times a game. Kyler Murray and this up-tempo offense of the Arizona Cardinals is going to have to throw the ball all 4 quarters every single week of the season. Most time, they're trailing and they're trying to play catch-up in the 4th quarter. I don't care if it's garbage points or not. I want as many points from this offense as I can. Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald are both great options. Now for the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Lockett seems to be like a weekly must-start at this point. High-end wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. He's now not just big play dependent. He's seen the volume, and that volume makes him a lot safer. DK Metcalf is somebody who I don't care, to put in my lineup as a flex play this week. He's kind of like what Tyler Lockett was in the past, big play dependent. However, he's capable of making those big plays, and this is one of the worst passing defenses in Arizona. I expect Seattle to be able to throw with ease this week. DK Metcalf has that upside for those big plays, and that volume for Tyler Lockett is just too much to ignore here in week 4. Vikings and Bears up next in a game in which you would expect to be dominated by the defense on both sides. However, we're still starting Adam Thielen. He's the safer option in this offense. Listen, the Minnesota Vikings are a run-heavy team, and they should be for the most part because Dalvin Cook is absolutely killing everything. However, if this team wants to compete and play late into the season, they're going to have to figure out this passing game. It is not good to go as of right now. Right now, Adam Thielen may be the safest option here. Stephon Diggs has basically burnt every bridge from fantasy owners for the rest of the season. There's people wanting to drop Stephon Diggs after 3 weeks. I wouldn't drop Stephon Diggs yet. I would firmly place him on my bench until they can figure out what's going on in Minnesota, but I would not drop him as of yet. But like I said, Adam Thielen is definitely the safer option. Not really the PPR option that maybe he was in the past, but he's definitely the safest option here and somebody that could be a low-end wide receiver too going up against Chicago here this week. Allen Robinson, more of a flex play. He's going to be involved. More than likely, he'll be shadowed by Xavier Rhodes, but he's found that he can get that separation here throughout the season. The upside may not be there. The big, huge numbers may not be there, but the safety, the 75 yards on 6 receptions on a weekly basis, so especially if you're in PPR leagues, Allen Robinson, not a bad start here this week going up against the Minnesota Vikings. But like I said, this game could very well be dominated by defense, and none of these guys have that huge, huge ceiling here in week 4. Jags and Broncos up next, and I'm sure I'll get some hate for this take, but that's okay. I'll just ignore it because I don't like anybody in this game. I'm going to sit DJ Chark and Chris Conley for Jacksonville. Conley's banged up, not 100%. DJ Chark, highly, highly touchdown dependent, and he doesn't see enough consistent volume to where if he doesn't get that touchdown, he doesn't kill your fantasy lineup. If you throw him in there and he does not score, more than likely you're going to get like 4 to 5 points from DJ Chark. You're really, really relying on those touchdowns. Plus, is he matched up this week with Chris Harris? That's entirely a possibility. Now, I don't have Dede Westbrook on here, but he's just another one of those names that you can't count on consistently week in and week out. I definitely expect one of these guys on a weekly basis to have a great fantasy game. Which one is it going to be, though? It's almost impossible to figure out. I'm going to not start any of them here this week. Now, Cortland Sutton has shown that he has some big play upside and some consistency. However, Jalen Ramsey is still a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Does he shadow Cortland Sutton? More than likely, yes. Does A.J. Boye lock down Emmanuel Sanders, who just absolutely disappeared last week after torching the Bears 2 weeks ago? The whole offense in Denver is just too up and down. Maybe they start to rely a little bit more on the running game with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, trying to open that up a little bit more here against Jacksonville. It could be a tough day all the way around for both of these teams. Could be an ugly game, and I'm not starting any of these wide receivers. Cowboys and Saints up next. Pretty straightforward here. Amari Cooper has been one of the best fantasy football wide receivers so far here to start the young year, and he's an obvious must start. The Dallas Cowboys offense is looking great, and it's led by Amari Cooper right now in the receiving game with no Michael Gallup, which kind of makes Randall Cobb a little bit of a flex play at best, maybe in PPR leagues. He wasn't involved as much last week as we had expected, but this week going up against the New Orleans Saints team who can score points, even with Teddy Bridgewater, Randall Cobb does have that deeper league flex play upside, especially in PPR leagues. Michael Thomas, obvious must start. Is the volume going to be decreased? Maybe the efficiency-wise of Michael Thomas will be decreased with Teddy Bridgewater over Drew Brees. However, the volume is still going to be there, and so is the touchdown upside. Even though he may take a step backwards just a little bit, what does he go from the top 3 wide receivers down to the top 6 wide receivers? Whatever that drop-off is, it's not big enough to ever think about benching Michael Thomas. Bengals and Steelers up last game of the week, and we're going to start the usual suspects once again in this game. Tyler Boyd, he's back to his starting status. Last week had him as a sit going up against Buffalo. Like the matchup a lot better this week going up against Pittsburgh. And same with John Ross, another one of these guys who struggled last week, but it was one of the top fantasy football wide receivers through the first couple weeks of the season. I expect them to get back on track this week. Kind of a rivalry game, and definitely a lot better matchup going up against Pittsburgh than it was going up against Buffalo. Both Ross and Boyd going to be starts for me. Also, going to start Juju. Is he the same Juju that he was with Ben Roethlisberger? No, obviously not. He's going to be a little bit more reliant maybe on some of those big plays, but we've seen him make those big plays on a consistent basis. So even though Juju may not be elite wide receiver 1 status anymore, he may drop down to just high-end wide receiver 2 on a weekly basis with that wide receiver 1 upside. You can't bench him in a great matchup going up against Cincinnati. Once again, a must-start here, Juju Smith-Schuster. Going to sit James Washington and Deontay Thompson, though. I like both of these guys. I really do. And maybe if you're in a 14 or 16 team league, you maybe take a shot on one of these guys this week. The problem is, I think it's only going to be touchdown dependent on who has the better fantasy day. And it's really a toss-up of who it could be. It was Thompson last week. Could it be Washington this week? There was a big play that Washington just barely missed. The ball was overthrown by Mason Rudolph. It really could have changed his fantasy day around last week. However, I'm not really quite into starting these big play upside guys only. Maybe if there's a little bit more volume there to give it a little bit of a safety blanket, I would think about it. But being that it's just 100% big play touchdown upside and that's it, I'm going to sit both of these guys till one of them can really establish that solid wide receiver 2 status in Pittsburgh. All right, those are all my starts and sits here for Week 4 fantasy football. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. I'm not up here trying to tell you that I know everything and that I'm smarter than you. That's not how we do it on this channel. It's a very interactive channel. This is a community full of people that love fantasy football. We're all here to help each other out, not just me telling everybody what to do. There's a lot of great minds, and I see it down below in the comment section all the time. Help each other out. Let's help each other, win fantasy championships all year long. That's what it's all about, is the community that we're building here at Headliner Nation. Couldn't be more proud to be a part of it. Greatly appreciate your support. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.